John, nice to see you.
Thank you.
Can you introduce to the French audience what is Gun Owners of America? Because in France, when it comes to gun lobbies, let's say, we only hear about the NRA. So what is Gun Owners of America?
Well, thank you. Gun Owners of America is a national gun rights organization protecting our Second Amendment rights here in this country, which is the right to keep and bear arms, which is an extension of a right that all people in all countries all over the world have, which is a right to life. We have a right to protect our lives, and by extension, in America, and we believe it should apply everywhere in the world, a right to keep and bear arms as the best defense to protect ourselves, our lives, our property, and our families, the ones we love, from physical harm.
But like we hear that a lot of bad people use guns to take lives. So if you are pro-life, let's say, shouldn't Gun Owners of America push for the cancellation of all gun rights and people live without guns and there wouldn't be any killings afterwards?
Well, as we know, criminals, by definition, don't obey the law. And they're not going to disarm themselves. You have drug cartels, you have gangs that get guns illegally. They don't buy guns through the normal means that law-abiding Americans buy guns through. And the fact that we have criminals and we have potential for mass murders is more reason to protect that right to bear arms, because good people with guns can stop the bad people with guns and stop mass murders before they kill more and more people. And in fact, in France, there are more mass murders than there are in America.
Really?
Yeah, that's true. With guns or with car bombs or with other means.
Do you have like references for that? Or?
I will get you references.
Yeah, please.
Post in the link.
Because like actually, for the French viewpoint, we would say no. Actually, like Americans are like hillbillies. They have guns. They shoot at each other. So in America, it's actually more violent than in France. But you say otherwise. So
because in the fake U.S. media, they say a mass shooting is when 4 or more people are shot, not killed, but shot. But almost always, that's in the inner cities. It's gang-on-gang violence. It's drug deals gone bad. It's not what the few that are portrayed in the media. Those are tragic, but those happen in gun-free zones like schools. That's why we want to arm teachers, or allow teachers to be armed if they have a concealed carry permit. They happen in churches. We should encourage people to carry a firearm when they go to a church. When they go to these places that are considered soft targets, because the criminal has a high expectancy that the people will be disarmed there.
Yeah, I mean, I studied a little bit what happened in Florida, and even before that, what happened in the church. Actually, I believe it was an NR instructor who took his rifle, actually pursued the guy, and was able to eliminate him at the end. Do you really believe that places of worship, such as churches or schools, should have the ability to defend themselves?
Yeah, especially places like schools, where our children are. We protect our money and our jewelry, with armed guards, but our children don't get that same protection. And in Florida, the person, that murderer, I won't even use his name, that despicable person who killed all those children, had been in contact with law enforcement over 40 times, and they didn't arrest him because of the policies of that local government. They let him fall through the cracks. And the person who was at the school, who worked for the sheriff's office, didn't go in. He was the only person with a gun, but he didn't go in. In fact, he's been charged now with some form of negligence because he didn't do his job. And what we're saying is that if a teacher wants to carry a gun, we're not saying they have to or force them to, but if they want to, we're not saying that they need to, roam the hallways and look for the bad guy. But if they're protecting their students in that classroom, and the bad guy comes through the door, that they have that last chance, that last line of defense to protect their students' lives. And the same thing with churches, filled with women and children. A lot of money in churches, and it's a target for violent crime. And we need people to have the ability to protect themselves when they're at worship. And in fact, that has happened. And again, I'll send you references where
Happy to have.
people have used guns to stop shootings in churches.
So would you say that pastors like Pastor Sean Moon or pastor like George Cook having concealed carry, do you think that you would go to these kind of churches rather than churches that ban guns?
Well, whether or not it's the pastor or the deacons or just in my case, just regular old parishioners. There's a missionary in South Africa, Charles van Wyk. His church was attacked by men with full autos and a grenade. And Charles' friend put himself on a grenade and sacrificed his own life. And Charles had a .38 revolver, and he shot back, and they ran because the criminals aren't accustomed to the good guys fighting back. And he was able to stop that. I mean, some people died, but it could have been a lot worse.
I heard that recently, like Donald Trump appointed an official, I forgot his name, who is a pro-gun ban. Is there going to be any threats to the Second Amendment on the federal level?
There were a couple. The Attorney General that has just been confirmed had in the 1990s supported a so-called assault weapons ban, so a ban on a lot of semi-automatic firearms. He's been confirmed. There was another official to head another government agency that regulates firearms, and he had taken some bad positions against guns, but his confirmation has been delayed and it may be withdrawn. So we're hopeful that nothing bad comes out of that.
Gun owners in America seems that they're a bit reluctant to big governments. They want like to limit the scope of the government's action. What do you think so?
It's because our government was created by us, by we the people. Our Constitution begins in the preamble. We the people do establish and ordain this government, and then the Constitution lists out what the government is allowed to do. So it's not that we want the government to be small just for the sake of being small. We want it to be limited. Where it has delegated powers, we want it to be strong. Where it does not have delegated powers, we want it to stay out of our lives. And particularly when it comes to gun rights, the Second Amendment says our right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's a direct command to the government to leave our gun rights alone. So anything that the government does to infringe on that right goes against the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution.
But I heard talking to someone else that says pretty much in the state of Pennsylvania, that Second Amendment shall not be even questioned.
That's right. It shouldn't be questioned. It's an inalienable right. The government should just stay out of it, and all of the gun control laws that we have on the books need to be challenged in court, and which is one of the things that we do, and hopefully to find them to be unconstitutional and to restore that right to what it should be.
In France, there was a poll saying, I believe it was ordained by CNN, talking about what Americans believe, what they think about removing guns from gun owners. And if I remember correctly, it says that over 50% of Americans supposedly would agree with that. What do you think about that?
Well, for one thing, I don't trust any poll that CNN does because they ask questions in ways or to get the answer that they want.
Same thing, friends.
But besides that, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights was meant to protect the minority of the people from the majority. So,
like blacks and Jewish people.
whatever the minority is. If the 51% of the people said take away your First Amendment rights, we would say no. We still have the freedom of speech.
What about 99%?
It's the Constitution that can be changed. The Constitution itself lays out how it can be changed, but it can't be changed by the legislature, it can't be changed by the executive, it can't be changed by the judges. It could be changed by ratification of the states. But that's how you know these polls are fake, because if 90% of the people really did believe in something like that, like massive gun control, they would be able to easily change the Constitution. But they can't, because those polls aren't real. They're fake news, and they're just meant to drive an agenda to pass more laws, to scare the politicians into voting for laws that destroy our rights.
So would you say that with I think the 1.5 million members that you have on GOA and the million more of people supporting the NRA, we say that Americans as a whole are most likely to support guns or are pro banning guns?
Well, you see it in the polls. I mean, if 90% of the people supported some type of gun control, like universal background checks or something like that, they wouldn't have elected Donald Trump. They would have voted for Hillary Clinton. So the polls that really count are in the elections, and in the elections, the people who support the strictest gun control outside of the big cities. In the big cities, gun control wins because the Democrats control them. But in places like this, in areas of the country that still love their freedoms and their constitutional rights and their Second Amendment liberties, the other side doesn't win in the polls that count on election day.
So in France, we are allowed to buy guns, but that's more for shooting practice purposes. We can buy even AR-15s. Keep it safe at home. Bring them safely to the gun range and practice, but we're not allowed to use them to protect ourselves. And it goes so far as that even if you buy like pepper spray, if it's above like 100 milliliters of pepper spray, you're not allowed to carry it with you on the street. If you do so, you have a fine. What do you think about that?
Well, like I said earlier, the right to life, the right to protect your life is a universal right. The people in France or any other country should be able to enjoy some type of a Second Amendment right where they can use that gun to protect themselves, or the pepper spray or a slingshot or whatever it is. The fact is, all of the people you're talking about in France who go through the registration, who keep their guns locked up, who don't carry them for safety, they're never going to do anything wrong. They're not the ones who are going to commit crimes. So what good is it doing? It's not protecting anybody. It's just keeping people from the ability to protect themselves and their loved ones.
What do you think about background checks? Do you think that people should have background checks at all level, or like anyone can buy guns without any restriction, or how does it work for gun owners of America?
Again, it's the same type of thing. If a criminal knows he has to go through a background check, he's going to fail, he's not going to go through the background check. He's just going to buy the gun. And we know this from interviews with prisoners, that most of them buy their guns on the black market. They buy them illegally. They get them from family and friends, or they get someone who doesn't have a criminal record to buy the gun for them. And also, a lot of times,
They find ways to get.
and many times, particularly with some of the mass shootings that we've seen in this country, the perpetrator didn't have a record. That was their first. The person who shot up the congressional baseball game bought his guns legally in Illinois, in a state that's very hard to buy guns. They have a lot of background checks, but they pass a background check, and then you don't know that they're a criminal until after they commit the crime. So, again, it's the law-abiding people are going to go through the background checks. The known criminals are not going to. So what good is it doing other than letting the government know who has the guns.
Do you have any specific message that you want to send to the French people?
That all of the Frenchmen and women who love freedom should work within your own political system to do what you can to loosen those restrictions on your rights to defend yourselves, because that's when people are attacked. The first line of defense isn't the police, it's not the government, it's the potential victims of the attack. And the more power that the people have, the less they have to rely on the government for their own protection.